Oh, it's another one of these. Let's see if it's any good. Alright, I'm kinda into this. I have become the most powerful thing that has ever existed in existence. Soulstone Survivors quickly became the surprise indie gem I've been searching for this year. And before I get into it, if you're new here, hit subscribe. So this is another one of those you are the bullet hell style of roguelites that you've seen probably popping up quite a bit this year. I've played 3 brand new ones just this last week, and this is by far the best one. The concept is, you start a run as a little DPS baby, and synergize your character up to a god tier slaughter machine that you feel is maybe breaking the game, in the good satisfying kind of way. Think if Vampire Survivors had more of a 3D modern look, mixed with some Risk of Rain too. Instead of trying to survive to a certain time limit like its inspiration, here you're tasked with taking down a series of bosses as quickly as you can, as the hordes pouring down on you get larger and more difficult the longer you take. When you beat a new map once, you unlock what is pretty much the true endgame grind, which are higher curse tiers, which makes each map more difficult but with greater rewards. You can also eventually do what are called endless cycles, which, when you end a map, you can choose to continue on to an increasingly more difficult area with that same character. This is how you can really get your build up to ludicrous mode, and the footage I was showing towards the start of this video had this many effects popping off, for example. That's about 50 minutes into a endless run cycle. Each time your character levels up, you can improve your character's stats, or mix and match up to 6 abilities you have auto-fire off of them. When leveling up, you can also choose modifiers that alter the size, cast speed, or power of each of those abilities. Although you have that skill bar down at the bottom, there's no traditional activatable abilities here, other than your dash move, but some abilities do need to be aimed. On the furthest character I've had, into the level 200s, I didn't even find the cap of how large or how quickly these abilities can be fired off. That eagerness to see how far you can push the limits of statistical computations and effects your GPU and CPU can fire off from your build is what the secret sauce of this genre is, and luckily it's done very right here. With all the materials you'll gain from the different areas and taking down bosses within them, you can either craft alternate weapons for characters which change their starting ability and some of their stats, or you can use those materials for persistent skill tree upgrades that apply to all characters. There's a respectable amount of classes to unlock and just content overall here, especially for a day 1 early access game. The classes have positive and negative traits, along with different pools of abilities that make them play quite a bit differently. You're going to see a big difference building out a warrior-style character, a bow-wielding hunter-type character, a glass cannon magic caster, a tank, a minion master, or some kind of other weird hybrid you invent. If you're playing on an older system, you can turn down the graphical intensity of all those effects flying off you. You can also make the effects more transparent if you want to see the action a little better, and those damage numbers and health meters can be turned off entirely if you don't like them. So that's pretty much the basics, but to start wrapping this up, my final thoughts. Soulstone Survivors is currently my favorite indie game from this year, and grats to the team behind this because this is what I always wanted to see from something inspired by Vampire Survivors. This is running on a more modern engine and has a more traditional tiered progression to grind through, without missing any of the build variety and all the depth. Also, there's a huge speedrunning potential here, since each map tracks your fastest completion time, or alternatively, you can see how long you can last in the endless cycles. So that's pretty much my thoughts on it, but before I close this out, I want to know what you think of Soulstone Survivors if you happen to play the prologue for it, or if you grab its early access release on Steam on the 7th. Or if vaporizing hundreds of enemies a minute just isn't your thing for some reason. Might want to get that checked out. thanks for watching this. I'm Alex, and I'll see you next time.